Need a holiday gift that will keep her sparkling all year long? Right now, Blue Nile, the original online jeweler, is offering 30% off select jewelry. With experts on hand 24/7 to provide guidance, you're sure to find the perfect piece. And now there's even more to love about shopping at BlueNile.com. For a limited time, get 36-month special financing on minimum purchases of $1,000. Restrictions apply. See BlueNile.com for details. That's BlueNile.com.
In sports, the scoreboard doesn't tell the full story, but Netflix does. Stories about dads who happen to be world-class quarterbacks and a battle for the heart, soul, and direction of the multi-billion-dollar business of F1. Whether you're a diehard fan or you're brand new, Netflix has the stories for every type of fan. You can watch these incredible sports stories like Quarterback, F1 Drive to Survive, Untold, and many more now on Netflix.
Apple Card is the credit card created by Apple. You earn 3% daily cash back up front when you use it to buy a new iPhone 15, AirPods, or any products at Apple. And you can automatically grow your daily cash at 4.15% annual percentage yield when you open a high-yield savings account. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Savings accounts by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, member FDIC. Terms apply.
Serie A Chronicles is a Media Chronicles production.
Hello and welcome to another Serie A episode. Oh, sorry. I forgot what the show was called. Sorry.
Outtakes.
There's just like a pigeon that's mating, and I'm trying really hard not to look. Okay. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Serie A Chronicles. I'm Mina Rizuki, and as always, I'm joined by the fabulous Nikki Bandini. As we try to go through, I want to say exciting, but for once, things went as predicted, if that makes sense, a little bit in the title race, where there wasn't some great shocks, and everything comes across as somewhat understandable because, you know, Nikki, I've realized recently that I've been losing my hair and I can't figure out whether that's from COVID to you, or because, you know, like it's just become really stressful and it's too many games to watch. It's too many things to talk about. And I'm tired. How are you doing?
Well, mostly I'm just glad, Mina, that you introduced by saying I'm joined by Nikki Bandini, because I thought you were going to introduce the two pigeons who you've just told me are getting acquainted.
Shh, that's not supposed to...
Right outside your window, which I'm sorry, I can't not find funny. I'm all right.
Why do I have two pigeons meeting? I mean, what the hell's going on there?
Why
anyway,
not?
Yes.
Why not, Mina? You know, maybe they're just attention seekers trying to get some podcast mentions, trying to get, you know, Insta famous, who knows?
You know, they're London pigeons because, you know, they saw the sun for a second, took off their clothes and just started having sex. You know? This is what happens in London when we just glimpse the sun.
Oh, God. That is true. I haven't lived in London for a while, but that is true. Like, as soon as the sun comes out in the park, everyone's just not wearing clothes. It's true.
Yeah, it's like, what happened here, dude? Like, it's still 16 degrees. It's still pretty cold.
Anyway, you were asking me about the football.
Yes.
You know, Mina, this was, I suppose, by Serie A standards, it was a boring weekend, wasn't it? I mean, we had the first time since the 9th of January that all three of the top three have managed to win a game of football together, which probably should be some sort of cause of celebration, but it means that for once we haven't got a story of, well, this team stuffed it up or that team stuffed it up, because they actually all managed to win. So we were just talking about this before we came on air, weren't we? It's almost hard to know where to start with it, because there's not, as there has been, it feels like every week, someone to go, oh my God, how did they blow that?
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, obviously, the last time we spoke on this podcast as a main show, Inter had yet to play Bologna. So they were still in charge of their destiny and still in the driving seat for the Scudetto. Obviously, since then, we've made many episodes for Patreon members. But for those who don't listen to that, Inter did stuff it up. And it's back in Milan's hands. And it was an exciting, I guess, in one way, because there was a part of you that was like, hold on a second, are Milan going to manage this against Fiorentina? Because it was touch and go for a while, and you did think that once again it was a lot of, let's start there actually, it was a lot of, Leao brilliance, but missed chances. Giroud missed a sitter. You felt like, Kessie had that wonderful through ball, and Leao was coming in and doing a lot of things, but nothing was turning into a goal. And you just thought, oh, is this gonna go another way, and we're gonna see another 0-0? But they did manage to do that. Again, 28% of their goals have come in the last half an hour of a game, which goes to show you just how much they've grown in mentality. And that's obviously been a debate now in Italy about the fact that they are a team that, like Roma, have grown in that sense and are very capable of scoring in the end and always believing until the final whistle. But you don't look at this team and think to yourself, oh, the team that really wins you with all the beautiful play. I mean, they are beautiful, but you know what I mean. What do you think of what Sacchi said about the fact that Milan are modern and beautiful, and then Inter from the 60s?
Oh my goodness. Arrigo Sacchi successfully, what I think about is Arrigo Sacchi successfully making it all about him, as he always
I know.
As he always manages to do. I don't know. I think we've reached the point in the season where, of course, there's still analysis to be done, right? Of course, in individual games, managers are making decisions about their team selection, about their formations, about their systems, and adjusting on the fly. But I feel like we're almost into a phase where it does move a bit beyond that and into the just who's got the metal, isn't it? Who's got the metal to see it through? And there's a part of it when you look at these last couple of weeks where you can also say, God, the breaks are going Milan's way, right? Like, so Inter lose to Bologna, as you talked about, with just a colossal goalkeeping error, right? Like their backup goalkeeper, who, ironically enough, lots of people have wanted to see sooner because their starting goalkeepers had some disappointing games, but the backup goalkeeper comes in, swings a leg of the ball, it goes underneath, they concede one of the most terrible goals you can imagine, and they end up losing to Bologna. And now this weekend, Milan against Fiorentina, Milan are playing better. Fiorentina looked a little bit like they might be sort of maybe not on the beach, but packing their bag to go to the beach at that point. And it's the sort of a goalkeeping mistake again, Terracciano, that gives Milan what they need in the end. He just terrible clearance, goes straight out to Leao, and Leao is decisive, right? This is not the same as the Bologna goal. Leao still has a lot of work to do at that point, which he does brilliantly. But yeah, it does sort of have that sort of slight feel about it, doesn't it? Of just other stars aligning for something. But then I just can't hold on to those thoughts at the moment, because every week something surprises me as to like whether or not one of Inter or Milan play a more modern kind of football. I don't know. I think I slightly believe that. I believe that Inzaghi has more of a system, which, ironically, that is more what you tend to expect to hear Sacchi liking. I think Inzaghi has more of a sort of idea of the football he's trying to play, which has been hit and miss whether or not he's managed to achieve it, I think, this season. I think that Milan are really well coached on the details by Pioli. They've got players who are pulling in the same direction. That's where I come back to talking about, I'm not sure it is about system or tactics at this point. I think it's just about there's something in this Milan team that is starting to feel like it has a sense of its own destiny. And I think that's why they're starting to sort of have something about them, that little bit of magic that feels like right now it's going to see them across the line. Please do flag this up to me in a week's time when they get walloped by someone else and I have to eat all my words.
They do have a very difficult run in now. Well, I mean, Hellas Verona, I don't know what to expect from them either. So, I mean, there's something to be said about facing teams that are in the bottom half that might be fighting for a little bit more than teams that are in the top half. And perhaps, like you said, Fiorentina maybe not on the beach. But what's so interesting about them is that they're a team that just progresses the ball so quickly, minimal touches, beautiful football, beautiful dribbles. But they leave so many gaps and they take so many risks. And if they do want to be a team that actually significantly grow from the one that we've seen under Italiano, and obviously they're missing Vlahovic, so they're not going to be this brilliant in the second half of the season like they were, I think, at the beginning. But if they are to grow, then they need to not leave the kind of gaps that they do, that other people can be opportunistic like Milan. This is what I like about Milan. what I like so much about it is how much they've grown in the ways that they can try to deliver. You know, it is a progression in their mentality, is a progression in how they are opportunistic tactically, how they players like Tonali are growing to the extent of like running a midfield practically all on his own when Benacer is not available and Kessie is not making the best of it. So, but really, for me, it's Magnan, right? It's those moments.
He made a huge save.
What a save! And Cabral, I really thought, like, for me, that was it. That was a goal. For sure, that was a goal, you know? But it goes to show you how important, really, a goalkeeper is to your entire season. Because it's like you said, it's Terracciano for Fiorentina. That's the fault. It's Radu for Inter. It's been different goalkeepers for different teams. But having Magnan has added so many points to this Milan season. And it is these little details that have made the difference, because I do think overall, if I look at, you know, as a complete example, I think Inter are the better team. And I really like their football. They may not have the mentality and they may be a little bit more emotional. But in general, you know, what did you think of their game against Udinese? Because that was a potential banana slip.
Yeah, it was one of those games which felt like it was kind of done at half time, and then it wasn't. You know, they did let Udinese back into it, did get a bit more sort of hairy, but I never felt like they were going to blow this one. And maybe that again is, you know, me sort of applying subjective feelings on it. I felt like they were just never threatened that much by Udinese, even though Udinese did get that goal, did sort of put some pressure on the scoreline. I didn't feel like it was ever not Inter's game. Now, of course, those are situations from which it only takes your goalkeeper to let the ball go under their foot and change very, very quickly. But there weren't a lot of chances in the game. It wasn't a particularly exciting game. I was, to throw a question back at you, Mina, if I may, like, I was sort of curious to know what you think about Inzaghi afterwards, basically coming with the line, win the Supercoppa for the first time in 11 years, chance to win the Coppa Italia for the first time in 12 years, got through to the last 16 of the Champions League for the first time in, I think that's also 11 years. You know, who's trying to tell me this is not a successful season, even if we don't win the title? And I was curious to know, Mina, like, what your reaction to that was.
Is that because you think your reaction is different to mine? Anyway.
I can tell you what I think about it if you want. I think he's got, to some extent, he's got a point. I think it's fair to say that all those things are achievements that are meaningful. It's meaningful that they did go further in Europe than they would under Conte, which is always our big criticism under Conte. He was responding to this line about it being Pat Center again, saying, well, look, if this is crazy, then... And I think that's all fair. I think the bit where he lost me, and which I struggled with more, funnily enough, was not even that part of it. There's another thing he said, though, which was, you know, the start of the season, no one thought we were going to win the league. And that is also taken on its own true. But the reason no one thought they were going to win the league is because everyone thought Juventus were going to win the league again. No one was standing before the season started and saying Milan are going to finish ahead of you. They just weren't.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think that's true. I think there's a lot of people that saw all the financial problems that they were going through and the fact that they lost a lot of key players and thought, you know, obviously with Allegri back at Juventus, that is going to add to it, and Milan growing, definitely. But surely it's going to be much harder for Inter this season than it was last season. I would also agree with that.
But no one thought they'd be behind Milan. I really don't buy that part of it. Harder, yes. Yeah. But you're not losing to Juventus. You're losing to Milan. And that's the bit where he loses me, I think.
Yes, because frankly, it isn't even a Milan that has had all its best players available to them for the whole season. And a side that, even if it has its best players, is still inferior as a squad to the one that Inter has at the moment. It is the capacity to use a full squad. It is the ability to manage to rotate, to play, you know, Kalulu or Mattia Gabbia or Sal Mackers or whoever it is that they shoved up front. And Brahim Diaz, who's been really not very good and continues to start, because what are their alternatives at the moment? Mm-hmm. You know, it's difficult. And when you consider all of that, then yes, I do think for Inter that you have to look at themselves and think, why? Why have they dropped points? Why are they so emotional? What is it that makes them, you know, it's always a moment where they get annoyed about something and then everything changes and everything shifts. And that is something that they need to work on. But I do agree that they have played a lot more games than they did last season. Mm-hmm. There was a part of me that when I was watching them against Bologna where they looked really tired. I mean, you just didn't look at the side, and poor Barella, I think he's played every single minute of the season. And I don't know what their fitness coaching is like at the moment, but clearly it's not going to be as strong as it was last season. And when you add all those additional games, I do agree with him. There was how many games in 22 days? Then it becomes that much more difficult. And they have progressed. I guess with the quality of the squad, you expect more. But then when I really think about it, I think Correa, he's not really, Dzeko is 36. It's Denzel Dumfries' first season and he's been rather stupendous. They are kind of dependent on that midfield that has done wonders for them. Brozovic is growing leaps and bounds and Çalhanoğlu is double digits when it comes to assists and Barella is obviously Barella. I just wish that they are better and more patient. I think that's their issue. And I just didn't feel like that was their issue last year. So that's the only thing, because from a tactical point of view, from a development point of view, I think they're heaps and bounds better than they were last season. But from an emotional point of view, that's where I have an issue with it. And I don't know how I judge Inzaghi based on this, because I do think he's lucky to have had the squad. But another part of me also thinks, are we expecting too much?
I think the other big question for Inter with me now is just, how does this get better next season? Because the talk is again of a need to cut from the budget. Yeah. The talk is again of a need to make sales. We were already sort of talked plenty in the last weeks about Perisic. He was brilliant again at the weekend, but in that context, it becomes even harder to see him sign a new contract. I worry for Inzaghi that he'll end up. I think this is the thing with all these sorts of conversations, all these arguments, all these sort of, me making this, Inzaghi making that point of you guys didn't expect these things from us. The way that you sort of quiet that conversation is by going further next time. And I'm worried that it's going to be even harder to go further next time for them. So it does feel like an opportunity that's slipping away from Inter, a window that could be not closing, because I don't think they're about to collapse, but I think it could be, I don't know, the window analogy. I can't think of a good way to continue the window analogy, but it's going to be getting harder anyway. Maybe someone's putting a screen across it or something rather than closing it.
This is the thing, right? Because you feel like this is the best chance to win a title, a second one in a row, frankly speaking. Because from now on, if Investcorp really do buy Milan, which looks like it's going to happen, and they're going to spend money on it, and then you imagine Juventus will grow and they will get better under Allegri, like they have in the second half of the season, you think Roma trajectory probably up. Atalanta won't be as bad as they were this season. Napoli, you never know. You really never know. But this is the best chance, because I feel like Milan, they're 5 points better than they were last season. And you just imagine next year it'll probably be 10 points better than last season if they actually improve these areas. And so you start to wonder, I agree with you, with considering all the what they have to do from concessions and how much they might have to sell and what they can really spend. I don't know. But then I always believe in Marotta's ability to balance the squad. So it's going to be interesting to see that.
Yeah. But also, Mina, we could be here next week and Milan have lost a bit on and it's all changed.
Exactly.
So,
which could totally happen because Verona is that team, right? That took, fourth place away from Napoli last season. Let's talk about Napoli, because when we are talking about Inzaghi having to defend himself and obviously defend the season, Spalletti did something similar for Napoli and was like, let's talk about this. Like, we have qualified for the Champions League. We did it well in advance of what we managed last year. And to be honest with you, there's a part of me that agrees with him. Like, I don't know why all of it, like, maybe because their tremendous start to the season and the fact that this has been a team that has played together for many years, that everyone's always expecting this jump in quality from them. But they are a side that finished in 5th last season and they are in 3rd right now. And rather than applaud that, perhaps we have expected too much from this side. When you look at Milan's quality and you look at Napoli's, you think, well, Napoli is more complete and they should be doing better. But then you think, I don't know, should we be upset with them that they didn't actually challenge until the last day? Or should we be proud that they managed to gain two places in the league table, considering where they were last season under Gattuso?
Yeah, so this was the weekend when the top 4 basically all looked up their place in the Champions League. So Napoli are confirmed for the Champions League as well now for next season, aren't they? So everyone is set fair. If you're in the top 4 now, you're going to be in the Champions League, which is obviously a big load off for them, and that is an achievement in itself, and it is important for the club's finances. They had kind of the most fun game of the weekend against Sassuolo, but I was thinking about, if Fiorentina are sort of getting packed to go to the beach, then it looked like Sassuolo had not just gone to the beach, but they'd left the cooker on at home and set the house on fire. It was pretty sort of...
Yeah,
exactly. It was pretty sort of awful stuff at times, certainly defensively. But I mean, Sassuolo have had a few games.
Was Scamacca even there? I didn't even notice him for I don't know how long, I was like, what is this guy doing?
Sassuolo have been trending this way for a little while. But that kind of isn't part of the strengths. They had some wins since. I was thinking they had that 4-0 thrashing by Sampdoria, but that was all the way back in February. So actually they've had some good results since then as well. But they've lost 3 in a row. They look like a team that's packing up, and you do get some of that at the end of the season. But it also sort of, on the other side of it, does feel like it very much plays into the narrative that we've been talking about all season with Napoli, that this team can't handle the pressure, which was also why they weren't winning games at home, was also why they fell apart when the title race was up. And as soon as you take the pressure off them, it all comes together. I did think it was interesting, though, Mina, as well, that we had a big conversation, didn't we, last week? We had a conversation last week about ritiro and whether we agreed with it. And it sounds like ritiro in practice was, let's go out and have a few dinners together. It wasn't really actually go and spend a proper ritiro at all. And Spalletti saying, well, we should have even more meals together if this is the result. And you know what? Sure, yes, some team bonding, often a good idea.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a good idea, but I also think it did take him having to argue with the team and with management and De Laurentiis and his son, and to be like, look, I don't agree with this. I don't agree that this is the step forward. And there has been concessions from management to be like, okay, it's not going to be a full-blown retiro, but we'll try. Although the way that they reacted to that, if I was the team, I would have done badly. I would have done really badly in this game, specifically to say I don't want retiro to be the answer to these games. Yeah. And then you come out with this kind of win, and I'm thinking now you're just forcing them to treat you like kids. No, I'm joking. But I mean, I looked at this game, and again, I was annoyed because it was just Sangrisa as a defensive really man for the top half of the team. But it's like you said, Sassuolo didn't even show up, so there was no even point to talk about tactics or what was supposed to happen or which players. But the only thing that I really looked at in this game, and I thought to myself, Dries Mertens, oh my goodness, he really is the ace in your, up your sleeve. He's fantastic. Anytime he comes on, he does something so special. He's the one guarantee, other than Osman for me, in Napoli. And if he isn't going to stay next season, then please can we have him at Juventus or really honestly, him and Perisic right now, they blow me away with what they're doing despite their age and just how much of a guarantee they have been for their teams this season.
That's a really interesting thought. I know not even specific to Juventus, but see, I've been sort of caught in a while in this mindset that it'd be really sad if Mertens leaves Napoli, because Mertens loves Naples. Yeah. In fact, with this idea that the fix was just for everyone to go out for dinner, I've spoken to Dries Mertens about this stuff before. He said it was one of the things that really clicked with him in Naples was that he started living in the Neapolitan, going out late for dinner and doing these things. And you've only just put this thought in my head now, Mina, that if he were to leave, couldn't you just imagine him on a Champions League winning team next season being the guy who comes off the bench and scores 2 or 3 important goals on the way? I could see that, because he's not going to start for a Man City or something, but a team like that could use him really effectively in short bursts. And actually, I think that's a really interesting thought, because he's still special.
I mean, look, if Inter do have to sell someone, it would be a great person to bring in, just Mertens, But as it stands, there is the all likelihood that he will end up staying in Napoli, and Aurelio Di Laurentiis seems to want to give him further time on the bench or whatever on the team, because he has really been. There's a little fly. Sorry, I'm a little bit scared of insects. So anyway,
Mina versus wildlife.
Yeah, the wildlife in London is a teeny tiny fly, but I'm scared of them. So, but he is exceptional. It's going to be interesting as well to see what Napoli do on the transfer market, and whether or not what they decide to do and how much they decide to try to change, because this can't keep going where we're always talking about Napoli's mentality. I do think there needs to be an investigation, or players that are bought with a little bit more, I don't know, perhaps less technique, but more anger, if that makes sense. If that's something to be looked at, or how the team is even going to manage without Lorenzo Insigne, if it's going to be if you're going to really notice his absence or actually celebrate his absence. I don't know. I can't imagine you celebrate the absence of someone who's so technically gifted, but he is rather annoying as well. So it's going to be interesting to watch what's going to happen. But if you are to just a little if you are having to wonder who's going to finish in top four next season, do you think it'll be the same four based on the trajectory of these teams currently?
I think the most likely team to break the top four next season in my head is Roma right now.
Mm-hmm.
Could Atalanta also sort of there, but I think Roma is my answer, I think, in my head. And maybe you could see Inter or Napoli dropping out of it, but it's a long way off. It's the summer. You don't know what's going to happen. It's too soon. That's really speculative. And right now, I feel like the top four are the best four teams in Italy. So that depends on how things do go in the transfer window.
Okay, well, obviously, Nikki, I do think that you feel that Juventus, well, we thought Juventus would be a lot better this season than they were last season. And then they ended up sort of losing Ronaldo and suffering slightly. But Venezia was a team that actually had robbed them of all 3 points in the reverse fixture and managed to draw with them. This time around, they were under new stewardship because Zanetti had been sacked and they were under the control of their youth team manager. And obviously, it started really badly for them, and it was all about Juve in the beginning. But as always happens with Juve, somewhere along the line, they fall asleep and only really awaken when the points are threatening to drop even further. There was a lot of conversation because it was Miretti playing in midfield, and he's an 18-year-old, obviously grew up in the Juventus Academy, very gifted, usually plays a little bit further forward, but played more as a central midfielder on this occasion. There is obviously a huge injury crisis going on at Juventus currently, where they've had to play the likes of Danilo or whoever in midfield. But Danilo was able to play as defender, and Zakaria should have probably been sent off, but it was him, Rabiot, who is a lot better recently. I don't know what's happening to him, and Miretti. And they managed all 3 points to successfully qualify for the Champions League. Do you think they're going to be a team to fear next year?
Yeah, I think that it's not very easy to sort of fall in love with the Juventus team the way they're playing right now. They're not playing particularly exciting football. They're not particularly inspiring to watch. And maybe that's also influenced by the fact that they aren't playing right now for big targets. Like we've sort of felt reasonably confident they're going to get in the Champions League for a while. They haven't really been in that title race. So they're a bit sort of less grabby anyway. But the fact is still true that we've talked about a few times, Mina, which is if you started the season at the beginning of January, there's only one team that's got the same number of points as Juventus, and that's Milan. So those two would be the top two teams in Serie A if you started the season at the beginning of January. Now, of course, to an extent, you can go, well, that's ridiculous. You just said January because the beginning of the year doesn't mean anything. You can call it an arbitrary date. Sure, but they signed Vlahovic in January. So actually something did change in January that was quite meaningful. And he hasn't scored a million goals like we thought he might. And maybe he'll score more goals next season. But he has changed the whole dynamic of how that team works. And the fact is that their results with him have been pretty good. So I'm not inspired by Juventus right now. And I think that's a very sort of familiar feeling of years of watching Max Allegri. What inspires you with Max Allegri is when you realize, God, actually, take a step back for a second and look how he's consistently getting these results over and over again. And it's not coincidence. He does, or at least historically has, managed to build consistency in results leading into good decisions in big games, which is how they got to 2 Champions League finals. This season, they started horribly, and perhaps that is in one narrative that could be told a year from now. That was the clearing out of all the bad vibes and everything that needed to get cleared out from before. And that's gone now. We'll see. But I mean, right now, I think you can't ask much more than, again, having the joint most points of any team in Serie A in this calendar year. That they've improved, which is what people wanted to see them do.
Last week, we didn't speak about them because their game was on Monday and they had Sassuolo. But there was a part of me that nearly died laughing when he's like, well, I was going for the draw. And then, sadly, we got to win. You didn't say sadly, obviously, but there was a part of you that was like, he was almost annoyed that they won that match. And I don't know whether he's trolling the fans who hate him, because there are some things that he says that make you just think, like, have you lost your mind? But he does also really make me laugh. And I'm glad that he played Miretti in this game when, things are a little bit more secure and they are more established in where they are as a position and there's less pressure. And that way we can see the beauty of this midfielder who set up, honestly, the 2 goals effectively that Bonucci managed. They are set pieces, but also was the one that was at fault, perhaps, for the Venezia equalizer. But this just goes to show you that kids make mistakes, but they're also brilliant and can be very brilliant. And he is somebody with a bright future ahead of him. But as to why he wasn't brought in earlier, I don't like players being introduced when there's pressure, when there's things to consider, and when teams are not yet established in their identity or in their main features. Like, are they defending well? Are they attacking well? The Juventus has just been chaos for a while, and I think it was a good time to introduce him. But I also want to mention how important Bonucci is to this team. I mean, whether it's his launches forward, obviously on this occasion he got 2 goals, but he is still one of the only few that I can look at in the squad and feel like he has the Juventus determination that you think of. And it's going to be a really sad day because we're probably going to lose Chiellini, but to lose Bonucci effectively as well. And I would like De Ligt to do more from an attacking point of view, not to score goals. I mean, the launches that Bonucci does. And but right now he's holding the defense together. So it's been a marvelous season. Meanwhile, all of the top 4 boring games, the best were the Sampdoria versus Genoa, Roma and Lazio's games. Should we start with the amazing game that was Sampdoria-Genoa? Because this is supposed to be a derby. But obviously the iconic photo of that is Aldero kissing Criscito's head when he missed that penalty. And if there's ever anything as sporting culture and the beauty of football, it should be that. It should not be the trolling and it shouldn't be the madness. It should be that amazing picture in what is a really tough derby, considering both of them at this moment don't want to be caught up in a relegation fight.
Yeah, when you said amazing in football, I was like, well, it wasn't amazing. I thought the quality of it was poor, but it was.
Oh no, it was terrible.
High drama.
Sorry, high drama.
And there's so many threads going on here in that moment with Criscito, because, you know, for anyone who's not aware of this, like he started his career at Genoa. Like he was playing for a youth club in Naples. They signed him when he was 16 years old, gave him his debut in Serie B. He then had a career that took him briefly to Juventus, actually, and then for much longer time to Zenit St. Petersburg. But he's been sort of back into Genoa on and off for his whole career, 20-year career. He's been there a lot, and he's been there 4 times, I think 270 appearances. And he was supposed to leave at the beginning of this year. Like, he had a deal to go to Toronto. I'm actually not entirely sure if that deal may still happen in the summer, but he was supposed to leave in March, and he was going to go to Toronto FC, where he would play with eventually Lorenzo Insigne, of course. Those two are old friends. They go on summer holidays together, and you think, you know, he's in his mid-30s now. That was sort of maybe it's not the end of his career, who knows, but it's sort of the nice sort of late career chapter he's got to look forward to. And instead he stays to fight this relegation fight with Genoa. And so that's sort of, you know, the backdrop to then. The guy who loves Genoa so much he couldn't leave them and take the easy life lines up to take the penalty in the 94th minute of the derby, which is, for anyone who doesn't watch these games because they're not at the top of Serie A, Genoa derby, the derby against Sampdoria, is one of the most passionate in all of Serie A. But really, really, like, every time you see it at the Marassi, it's an incredible atmosphere, a stadium to go to if you ever get the chance. And in the 94th minute, they win a penalty. Criscito's missed no penalties in the last 2 years. He hasn't missed one in 8 attempts. He's a great penalty taker. He fluffs his lines. Like, so that's like such a high point of a moment of drama. And then on the other side of that story, 11 years ago, there was a derby at a really similar point of the season where the roles were reversed. So Genoa had this middling season, had kind of been in the relegation fight for a while, but were just about pulling out of it. So a bit like Sampdoria this season. And Sampdoria were the team fighting relegation. And that game was 1-1 until injury time, when Bozelli came off the bench. His players played like 180 minutes the whole season and scores a goal. And you were talking about, well, human moments, Mina, and the sort of sporting nature of it. That time things went very much the other way. You know, Genoa fans were parading coffins around the streets in Sampdoria colours to sort of taunt them. It was a merciless moment of sort of one-upmanship within the city. So you have all at once on the weekend a stadium with Sampdoria fans who are having their revenge served cold in the best possible way. You know, if you're a Sampdoria fan, you've waited 11 years to do this back to your rivals. And you've got Criscito, who it's just impossible as a human being not to feel destroyed for him. Like, he's made such a sort of, I'm sure it isn't selfless, but you can look at it as a very selfless choice to say, no, I won't go take the easy life at Toronto. I want to see this through and be part of this fight against relegation. And then gets that wrong in the big moment. And as you said, Aldero's reaction to it as a human being, sort of giving him a kiss on the head, it was very touching, wasn't it?
it's amazing because sometimes when you look at these, these teams fighting relegation, whether they be Salernitana or Cagliari, and you sometimes think that they don't care, right? They're just there. And it's so easy to fall into this narrative of thinking that these players, a lot of them are mercenaries and they don't really care about it and they can leave. But, when you see when you see his tears, when you see like how much, it was the 96th minute, and this was an opportunity to get 1 point that can really help save you right now. And to miss it after he'd gone 8 in a row it's hard and it's gut wrenching.
Yeah.
But I do want to applaud Sampdoria because I thought from a defensive point of view and how they covered spaces was really good. But I agree with you that I think it was a somewhat terrible game. But
and just to sort of complete the context on that, it doesn't mean Genoa are down, but Salernitana did win again. So Genoa are only 3 points behind a safety spot, but now Salernitana are ahead of them on the head-to-head. So you've basically got them, Cagliari and Salernitana fighting for that one spot. Only one of those teams is going to get safe at this point. Realistically, the maths, it's possible for other things to happen, but realistically, that's what's likely. And it's looking like more and more of an uphill now for Genoa.
All right, guys, we just want to do a few shout outs to new Chronicles Tifosi patrons and want to say thank you so much for supporting this podcast. It really does mean a lot to us. So today we're thanking Daniel Agudelo, Nene, oh, I like this name, Tom Bosket, Michael Hart, Stephen Zorzi,
Vivek UK, George and Josh. We've got 2 one-namers. And then we've got Hannah Vicinich. And we wanted to give a little special mention as well to Jonathan Borders, who said it's Serie A Chronicles is by far his favourite podcast, and Porty Allen, who both actually also were already at Chronicles Tifosi, but have very kindly sort of given a little bonus. We just want to say like a big thank you in general, actually, because everyone who has given us extra support since we sort of were honest with you guys about the situation we're trying to raise funding for the podcast, it's been amazing. So thank you all. We are still working on things. We're getting some more leads, but it's been really touching just to sort of see how you've all reacted to that. And we're really incredibly grateful, basically,
for supporting us. We will continue to bring the drama and the naughtiness. Okay, let's talk about my 2 favorite games of the week. Only because Jose Mourinho just makes everything so much more fun when he talks about it afterwards. So obviously Roma were held by Bologna. Bologna is now like, I don't know what, they have been stunning, quite honestly. And I didn't mention on my mini episode that sometimes tragedy can be one of your greatest motivators. But what's going on right now is horrible for Mihajlovic, but he can be really proud of his team that continue to fight and continue to get amazing results. Meanwhile, Arnautovic, according to Jose Mourinho, is basically Ibra and has been stunning to watch. But another great result for Bologna. This was an interesting game with Roma, who had to make lots and lots of changes because obviously they do have one eye on the semi-final against Leicester City in the Conference League. And the only thing that I kept thinking to myself is, with all these rotations, you still couldn't start Shmurdov. He just really hates this guy, yeah. And then he's the only one. Lots of changes happened straight after halftime, but still, poor Shmurdov had to wait until the 77th minute. What did you think of Roma's performance? Because honestly, this is a team that's growing, if not necessarily finding its way to always get the results needed. But they are playing, and the only team playing right now in Europe.
Yeah. Of course, did a mini-sode after the European performance. I thought this looked like a team that was doing what it did, rotating, and clearly has its attention on Thursday. I think that's fair enough. I know the Europa Conference League is a new and compared to other European competitions, maybe even an underwhelming prize to lots of people. But I think when you're in a European semi-final, I don't care which competition it is, and you're weighing that up against trying to finish 5th in the league, which is still important, but you should be prioritizing your European semi-final, and they did. I think it's one of the things that was my big takeaway from this game and just Roma in general at the moment is, we've expressed our skepticism with Mourinho at times this season. I've had my doubts with him at times this season. I still have plenty of doubts with him, but you cannot doubt the buy-in he's got now from the club supporters and how they're turning out late in the season to see these games for a team that is not anywhere near winning the league, that is competing for the 3rd tier European competition. He has got that he's energized the piazza. He has really energized the piazza. And I think that is something. Is it enough? I don't know, it's something. And I think qualifying for the Europa League next season will be another step forward in where they're trying to get to. So maybe it's not been all the progress they wanted, but it's something. And I think the Bologna game, Bologna on their own probably deserve more time. We've got time to give them, but they drew with Milan, beat Inter. They are a team that are playing their socks out of Mihailovic, and it's amazing to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was interesting that Zaniolo was played as a false number 9. Just a few mentions there. I'm not sure whether or not Medel should have been sent off, but there's been some really bizarre refereeing going on in general, which we don't like to cover so much on this pod because what are you going to do, right? And the one thing I do like about Roma, though, is Nuno Santos. You can guarantee that he's going to lose his rag at one point. I guess one of the other things that we should mention is the way that Mourinho has gotten the fans on board. And I guess it kind of helps when he gets to mention that Acerbi's winner for Lazio against Spezia was offside. But we have to talk about this refereeing decision, even though we try to avoid them as much as possible. But you looked at that. You looked at the images. What do you think about it?
I think it's classic Mourinho misdirection to make it a conversation point. I think Lazio rose to it spectacularly, releasing a club statement, basically saying, as I think it was Patrick Hendrick put it on Twitter, but basically just saying, yeah, we're living rent free in your head. It's sort of amazingly childish, but it's amazingly like exactly what Mourinho would love to do. The decision itself, honestly, yeah, watching it, I think he's offside. Having said that, the angle they've got on the camera that everyone's trying to show like the lines on, it's behind the action. So you actually can't see down the line.
So you don't know. Yeah, it's difficult.
So I don't have a problem with not overturning it because you haven't got incontrovertible evidence. To me, that's how I feel about it.
But I do want to say that, Spezia, 3 times they take control in that match, What a thriller that must have been for Acerbi to get the winner, considering all the criticism that he faced after that loss to Milan and how much people talked about him laughing. As somebody who laughs in really awful moments, I really understand him because that's exactly that kind of reaction that I would have at that point as well, because it would be like, sod my life. Like, obviously that was going to happen. And then you sort of smile about it. Yeah. But, sadly, that moment is captured by all the cameras. And it provoked a lot of horrible reactions. And I'm glad for him that he managed to get that winner. Whether or not it was legal remains to be noted. But from what I understand, the man who worked the VAR, it was Luca Pareto and Luigi Nascia, match director and employee of the... So apparently they're going to be suspended and not work for the rest of the season.
Which sounds dramatic, but that's 3 games. It's not like you're getting suspended for months, is it? It's like, go on.
Yes, exactly. So it's only 3 matches. Yeah. But that means that they do think there's something dodgy there to be considered. But whatever it is, everyone's had dodgy decisions this season in Serie A. And I'm still one of those types of people where I think it all levels out in the end. But I think that's all we have time for, Nikki.
Yeah. I just want to sign off by saying thank you again to everyone who supported the show. We don't want you to, as listeners, feel like you have to carry this show. We are working on getting those sponsorships. We've got some really interesting conversations coming up, but it is a huge boost to us and really helps us. And we're just incredibly grateful and touched, frankly, that you guys enjoy the show and want to help us keep it going, because we love making it for you guys and we love having the conversations with you guys. So thank you. If you would like to join us on Patreon, if you're not doing that already, you can do that via the website. There's also a button for a one-time tip via Ko-fi. That's all on serieachronicles.com. You can find us on Twitter at Nikki Bandini, at Mina Rizuki, and you can follow Serie A Chronicles accounts on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. We will be back next week with our next episode of the show, and we'll have some Patreon mini-sodes coming up during the week as well.
Official Podcast Network.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.